Well, what time do you guys think it is?
Story!
It is. And our story today is coming from the book Broken Stick, which is another story that like what I told you last week, from the islands that are called the Solomon Islands. Well, this story is called The Rescue Birds. Now, in one of the islands called Guadalcanal, near the Solomon Islands, there were many different villages of people who would live up in the mountains or out in the jungle, and they didn't know anything about Jesus. The only thing they knew was the devil worship, and they would worship the devils. They would give sacrifices to little idols. They would burn some incense or some wood to try to get the devils and the evil spirits to not bother them. The people who lived there, well, they lived like many of the other villagers did. They didn't know how to take care of themselves, how to keep themselves healthy. And one of the bad choices that they would make is that they had pet pigs and pigs that they would raise to kill for eating, and they would let the pigs sleep in the bed with the kids. Does that sound particularly fun? How many people want a pig to sleep in their bed?
No.
No. Well, they would just let the pigs wander in and out of their huts, and at night the pigs would just lie down in the same bed where the kids would sleep. And because of that, the kids would get infections on their skin, because the pigs had really dirty skin, and they would carry fungus, like these little microscopic things on their skin, and that would get onto the kid's skin, and then it would start to make a rash. And it would make a little rash at first. When they were just little babies, they'd get a little circle rash, and then it would get bigger, and then it would get bigger, and it would turn really black, and it would look really ugly. And because they didn't have any medicine to treat it and get rid of it, and because even if they did have medicine, they kept sleeping with the pigs, their infections would get bigger and bigger. They'd get patches of this all over their body, and by the time they would get older, like teenagers and adults, almost all their body would be covered with this black, scaly, itchy rash. Oh, did I mention it was itchy? It itched so bad. Most of the people would always be sitting around with a stick in their hand just scratching, because it just itched all the time. And this rash was so thick, you couldn't even see your real skin underneath it. It was just like having this nasty, bumpy, itchy rash all over. It was terrible, and they had no way to get rid of it. But one day, some of the people who lived in the village of Aola heard something, and it made them kind of excited. They heard, hey, there's some people who've set up a mission station, and in their mission station, they're telling people about Jesus, and they're also giving out medicine to help cure their infections and their diseases. And we've heard that some of the people who go to visit the mission station and they go with that black rash all over their bodies, they can get cured and the black rash eventually goes away. Well, that was pretty exciting. A lot of the people liked that idea, but most of the people wouldn't go. You know why? Because they knew that the people at the mission station were teaching about a different type of worship, and they didn't want to learn a different type of worship. Some of the people didn't want to learn a different type of worship because that was all they knew. They just knew to worship the devils. They didn't want to learn anything new. But some of them didn't want to go because they were scared. They were scared because they knew that if you left the village and went to hear about some new god and you started worshiping a different way, the people in your village would make fun of you, and they might even get angry at you, and they might even try to hurt you. So most of the people who heard about the mission station said, oh, that's really nice that they have medicine to treat the itchy black rash that we all have from letting the pig sleep with us. But, well, they didn't know it was from letting the pig sleep with them, actually. But we don't want to go over there because then we don't want to hear about another kind of God and end up getting in trouble with our village, and especially with the devil priest in our village. He might get angry at us and tell the other people to hurt us. But there were a couple girls who did want to go. They went up to their mother and they said, Mama, we've heard that there's people teaching about a God, and he's a God who lives up in heaven, and he made the world, and he's coming back soon, and we want to go learn more about it. And the mom said, you know, I think we should go hear about it. Let's go. Where is it? And the girl said, oh, it's in another village. It's about 4 hours away from here. Is 4 hours a long time?
No.
It is kind of a long time if you have to travel. Have you ever sat in a car for 4 hours? Yeah, it's boring. That's like driving twice as far as camp meeting. Okay, camp meeting is a long ways. This is driving 4 hours, but guess what? They didn't have cars. They would have to walk for 4 hours.
It's like
Oh. And to go that far on foot, that meant you had to go 4 hours to get there, but then you had to go 4 hours to get back home as well. How much is 4 plus 4?
8.
That means they would spend 8 hours of their day walking. Have you ever walked for 8 hours in a day? No, I don't think any of us have ever walked for 8 hours in a day. So they had to walk, but they decided they would do it, and they walked and walked all the way there until they got to the mission station. And when they got there, they looked around, and there were people being taught in a school over here, and there were people working in gardens over here, and in a building over there was a man and a woman and some other people, and they were the missionaries, and they were helping treat people's illnesses. And they said, "Hello, we're here to learn about Jesus and get some help for our infection on our skin." And the missionary looked at their skin, and do you know, he thought to himself, "I have never seen a rash this bad. These people have rashes all over their entire body, from the top of their head all the way to the feet. Even their hair was falling out because the rash would like take over and it would make their hair fall out, and they'd get rash all over the top of their head." Have you ever had a rash so bad that your hair fell out? No, I haven't either. The missionary thought to himself, "Oh my, this is going to take a long time to cure their infection. I have to treat it for a long time to make that rash go away." He told them, "I'm glad to help you fight your skin infection. It's going to take a long time for it to get better. So you have to understand, it will not get better right away today or tomorrow or the day after that or even in a few weeks. It's going to take a long time. But I can definitely teach you about Jesus too. And if you stick around until this evening, we have a meeting every evening, and we'll talk about Jesus and show pictures. And so you can definitely learn about Jesus really fast, even before your rash goes away." And they liked that idea, except the mom thought, "Oh boy, that means we have to stay until evening. And then after the meeting is done, then we have to walk home. We're going to be getting home really late." And they didn't own any flashlights. They didn't have anything that would let them have a nice street light on the way home to see, or a headlamp or anything. They were going to have to walk home in the dark. But the mom said, "Okay, we'll stay." So the missionary gave them the first treatment of medicine to try to fight against the skin infection. It was a medicine you had to put on their skin, and when you would put it on the skin, it would feel really hot because it was kind of destroying the rash. And it would hurt and burn. Ooh, it would hurt for about 20 minutes. Ooh. So he'd only put on a little part of their body to start with. And they would sit there and wait, ooh, while their arm felt really hot. Ooh. And then it would stop hurting. And then they looked to see if it was better. Was it better?
No.
No, it still looked like a rash. And they had to believe that it was going to get better, but they couldn't see any proof of it yet. They stuck around and waited for the evening meeting. The meeting was so fun. There was a picture of Jesus that the missionary showed, and he told them about Jesus loving them and how he came as a baby. And they started learning so many wonderful things. They were so excited that on the way home, it didn't even feel like 4 hours walking on the way home. Even though it was late at night, walking through the jungle where there might be fierce animals, where there might be branches or thorns and things you have to watch out for, they weren't even worried or bothered. They were talking the whole way home about how exciting it was to learn about Jesus. And the next day, they were tired because they got home really late, but they got up, they did what they needed to do in their home to get their gardening done, to make their food, and then they started walking 4 hours back, and they went back to the mission station, got their treatment on their body, and the medicine was hot. Ooh, and after 20 minutes was done, it didn't hurt, and they looked at their arms, and the rash didn't look any better. But they stuck around, and they heard the stories that night and went back home, and they kept doing that for a few weeks. And after a few weeks, they did look like maybe the part of their arm where they had been treating was starting to get a little bit better. And the doctor had started putting it on other parts of their skin now too, but the other parts didn't look any better, and their arm only looked a little better. And they thought, "Oh, we really hope this will get better." Now, in the meantime, the people in the village noticed that they were gone every day. They'd be gone for over 10 hours a day. 4 hours walking, a couple hours there at the mission station, 4 hours walking back. And the people started asking them, "What's going on? Where are you going?" And when they found out they were going to the mission station, some of the people made fun of them. Some of the people got angry at them and said, "You're going to get the evil spirits angry at us. They're going to start blaming us. If bad things start happening, we're going to blame you because the evil spirits are upset that you're going somewhere else and learning about a different God." And the mom and the daughters thought about it, and they said, "No, we're still going to keep going." And they kept going, and then one day, the devil priest came up to them and he said, "I've heard you're going to that village to learn about Jesus, and that you've been going so much, and you're starting to tell people in my village about Jesus, and I don't like it. I want you to know something. If you ever decide to get baptized and join the church of the missionary, I will kill you." Whoa. He's not joking around. This devil priest was angry. He was obviously very upset that they were learning about Jesus. And the mom and the daughters looked at each other and they thought about it, and they decided, we're going to keep going. So they went again the next day. And that day when they were there, in the evening meeting after getting their medicine that morning, and sure enough, their arm was starting to get a little bit nicer, all the way up to the elbow now. It was clearing up, but the rest of the skin didn't look better yet. As they were there for the evening meeting, one of the missionaries stood up and he said, I want to tell you that Jesus loves you so much he died for you. And I want to invite those of you who've been coming for weeks now, if you're ready to stand up and follow Jesus and let him be in your heart, and you want to choose to be baptized pretty soon, I want you to stand up. And you know who stood up? Who stood up, do you think?
The girls.
The girls and their mom stood up, and they said, yes, we want to be baptized. Please teach us more about Jesus. We'll come to take extra lessons about the Bible, and we want to be baptized someday soon. And all the missionaries were so happy. The mission doctor was so happy. The mom and her daughters were happy. And then they walked home that evening. And they walked for 4 hours through the dark. And as they were going home, talking and feeling so happy, all of a sudden they started to get a little bit, like a little weird feeling, like right between their shoulder blades, kind of like a nervous feeling, like, is somebody watching me? Is somebody sneaking up on me? And as they walked further through the jungle path, all of a sudden, 4 men stepped out of the jungle. There were 4 of the men from the village who worked for the devil priest, and they had big shiny knives, and with the starlight coming down through the leaves, you could see the knives glistening in the night. And the mom and the daughters, their eyes got really big, and they didn't know what to do for just a moment, and then they did know what to do, because they remembered something the missionary had taught them. The missionary had told them that God will never leave you nor forsake you. Have you guys ever heard a memory verse like that? How about a memory verse that says, I am with you always wherever you go? Have you heard a memory verse like that? Yeah. They learned those kind of memory verses, and when they remembered that, they remembered we should pray. And so immediately, the mom and her daughters just knelt down. They didn't try to run away. They didn't try to hide behind a tree. They knelt down right there on the path, and they said, Jesus, please save us. That's all they had time to say, because the men were walking towards them. But suddenly, there was a sound. It was a sound coming from all around. And it was a sound of loud, rushing noise coming through the jungle trees. And it wasn't like an animal running on the ground, crunching on branches. It was a sound of something flying. But not just one thing, it was many things. It was a whole flock of birds. Big tropical birds. Now, there was a couple weird things about this tropical bird, this whole flock of tropical birds flying through the jungle. The first weird thing was, these kind of tropical birds, they normally sleep at night. They don't fly around at nighttime. They come out in the day, they feed, they raise their babies, they eat fruit, and then they go to sleep for the night. So that was the first strange thing. Second strange thing was, there was a whole lot of these birds. It wasn't just a couple of them. It was like every one of these birds on the island had all decided to get together and just have a big meeting right there on the path that night. And the third thing that was very strange was what the men with the knives found out in just a moment. Because those birds usually were very calm, peaceful birds. They wouldn't bother anybody. They'd fly around. They're looking for fruit. They're looking for things to eat. But these birds, they turned on the men and attacked them. The whole flock came out of the jungle from all directions and started pecking the men with the knives. And the men with the knives at first thought, oh, this is just a strange little coincidence. They'll go away in a moment. Shoo, go away. We're about to kill some people on the trail here. But the birds wouldn't leave. They would use their claws to hang on to the men, and they would land on them and then start pecking them with their beaks. Now, they weren't woodpeckers, but they still had pretty hard beaks because they used their beaks to eat things like nuts and seeds and hard fruits. And so they had pretty sharp pecking beaks, and they were grabbing and biting and pecking, and the men started screaming, ow, oh, ow, oh, ow. And all the 4 men started running around trying to get rid of the birds, and they couldn't get rid of them. And finally the men said, let's get out of here. And they turned and ran up the trail back towards the village, and the birds chased them all the way back to the village, and then the birds disappeared. They flew off into the jungle. And the mom and her daughters said, thank you for saving us. And they went home walking through the dark until they got to the village. They went inside their hut, and they stayed there all night, and they slept peacefully knowing that Jesus was watching over them. But in the morning when they got up, there was one more surprise for them. Because when they got up, they were eating their breakfast, and they were cleaning things up inside their hut. They had started keeping things a lot cleaner in their hut. They didn't let the pigs sleep with them anymore. They always swept the floor. They made sure to wash their dishes. And they were having a morning, just their normal morning routine, when the chief of the village came and he knocked on the front of the hut, and he said, "I have to ask you something." And the mom said, "Yes, what is it?" And the chief said, "Who were those men guarding your house last night?" And the mom said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "There were people guarding your house last night. Some of the people in the village were coming to your house last night. I think that they were going to hurt you or burn your hut down. But then they saw all these tall men in white, glowing outfits standing around your hut. And as they got closer, the tall men in the white glowing outfits started to shine bright lights at them in their eyes, and they couldn't even see where to go. And then we were stumbling around. They were stumbling around, and they couldn't find your hut to burn it down, and they all ran home." So where did those men come from? Where did those lights come from? That's what I want to know. That's what they want to know. The village chief had been there, coming with those people to hurt them the night before, hadn't he? The mother said, "I don't know who they were for sure. I never saw them. I didn't know that was going on. But I know where they came from. They came from the God in heaven. The same God in heaven who sent the birds to rescue us in the night when there were men trying to jump out with knives and get us. Did you know anything about that, chief?" And the village chief just looked kind of guilty. He said, "Oh yeah, I might have heard something about that." And she said, "The God in heaven, He will never leave us nor forsake us. The God in heaven is with us wherever we go. And so we are going to get baptized soon, and we're not afraid, and we're not going to move out of this village and run away, because we know God will take care of us." And they packed up their things for the day, and they went back to the missionary station. They got their medicine, and they had their lessons, and then they had their evening meeting, and they walked home, and they did that for a few weeks, and then they got baptized. And do you know, very soon after they were baptized, their skin finished healing up all better, and they were the only people in the village who had no black itchy rash. They didn't have to carry a stick around to scratch themselves anymore, and all the other people in the village started going, "I'd like to have no itchy rash. They don't seem to be having problems with the evil spirits. They seem happier than the rest of us. I think we want to learn about this God too." And even though the devil priest was angry, some of the other villagers started saying, "Hey, can we go with you to the mission station? Can we go and get some of that medicine for our rash? Can we go and learn about this God you're learning about?" And do you know, within a couple of years, there was a church built in the town of Aola, the village of Aola, where they lived. And there were people going to church there, and people weren't sleeping with their pigs anymore, and people weren't getting the black itchy rash anymore, all because of that one mom and her two daughters who weren't afraid. They believed what God said, and they followed God wherever He was going to lead them, and God protected them when they needed it. He sent rescue birds. He sent angels outside their hut. And they now are missionaries of themselves, right there in their own village, telling people about Jesus and helping them to live happier lives. That's a wonderful story. I'm so glad that we have that story and so many other stories to encourage us when we forget sometimes that God watches over us. I like that story too. Okay, let's go ahead and say a quick prayer for the missionaries and for all the people in Guadalcanal who are worshiping God. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for that story. Thank you that you protected the mom and her daughters with the rescue birds and then with the angels outside their house. Thank you that you watch over us too. And help us to remember that you're with us wherever we go. That means that whenever we are following you and doing what you say, that we don't need to worry at all. It also means that when we're choosing to do something that is not what you say, that we need to remember that you're still there with us and you're watching, and that we need to obey you and not disappoint you. Help us now through the rest of today to be witnesses for you. We love you. Amen.